The ultimatum. No one could pinpoint the exact moment when humanity's patience ran out. The conclave of species, however, would forever remember the day they realized it had happened. Grand Ambassador Thrix of the Zolarian Empire sat at the head of the crescent-shaped council table, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he regarded the lone human representative with barely concealed disdain. The human wore no ceremonial robes, no traditional peace emblems, just a simple dark uniform without insignia. Military grade, unmistakably. This assembly finds the Terran Alliance in violation of trade protocols 17, 32, and 44, Thrix announced, his translator converting his clicking speech into the standard galactic tongue. You have exceeded extraction quotas on 3 shared worlds, disrupted established commerce lanes, and failed to submit proper documentation for technological innovations. How does Earth respond to these charges? The chamber fell silent. 27 species represented, over 4,000 star systems between them, all watching as Commander Elena Reyes slowly stood from her seat. Behind her, 2 other humans, previously unnoticed, stepped forward from the shadows. Ambassador Thrix, Reyes began, her voice calm but edged with something the aliens couldn't quite identify. For 73 years, humanity has played by your rules. We've paid your tariffs. We've restricted our expansion. We've shared our innovations while receiving scraps in return. She paused, scanning the chamber. And we've buried our dead while the conclave debated procedure. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A Palaxian diplomat's skin flushed deep purple. You will address this body with appropriate respect, human, he hissed. You stand before the most powerful coalition in 7 galactic sectors. Commander Reyes didn't flinch. 3 months ago, our research outpost on Proxima Centauri IV was attacked. 93 scientists, civilians, were killed. Their bodies were spaced. We presented evidence that Grithan privateers were responsible. Evidence that they were operating with Conclave-issued weapons. That matter is still under investigation, interjected a Gruthan representative, mandibles clicking nervously. For 90 days, Reyes continued as if she hadn't heard him. 90 days of committees and subcommittees and requests for additional documentation, while the architects of a massacre walk free. Thrix leaned forward. The conclave moves at its own pace, Commander. Our processes ensure fairness for all member species. If you came here to demand expedition off. I didn't come to demand anything. Reyes interrupted, the first crack appearing in her professional demeanor. I came to notify you. The chamber went deathly quiet. One of the humans behind her activated a small device. A holographic display materialized above the council table, detailed schematics of conclave defense systems, classified fleet positions, security protocols for a dozen homeworlds. How did you access? A Meridian counselor began, her fins flaring in alarm. Remember when we applied to join your defense council? Reyes asked, her voice suddenly softer, more dangerous. When we offered our expertise in exchange for a seat at the table, you said humans were too unpredictable, too emotional. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You were right. Grand Ambassador Thrix rose from his seat, towering over the human. This is a direct violation of sovereignty. A declaration off. This isn't a declaration of anything, Reyes cut in. It's a notification. The Terran Alliance has exhausted its diplomatic options. Effective immediately, we will no longer participate in this charade of cooperation. We will no longer ask permission to defend our people. We will no longer pretend that your rules apply to us. She nodded to her companions, who deactivated the hologram. You have 24 hours to turn over those responsible for the Proxima massacre. After that, humanity will administer its own justice. You're threatening the entire conclave. The Palaxian diplomat laughed, though it sounded hollow. Your species barely controls 50 systems. You would start a war with 4,000. Commander Reyes was already turning to leave. Over her shoulder, she replied simply, if necessary, we'll end it too. The doors sealed behind the human delegation, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. It took several minutes before anyone spoke. "Empty threats," the Gruthan representative finally said, though his mandibles continued to twitch nervously. "They wouldn't dare." High Chancellor Velorn, eldest of the Meridian race and longest-serving conclave member, had remained silent throughout the exchange. Now his ancient voice cut through the chamber like a knife. "For 10,000 years, I have studied emerging species. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. And never, not once, have I seen a race adapt as quickly as humans." He turned his gaze to Thrix. "Did you know they developed faster than light travel only 2 centuries after discovering nuclear fission? Do you understand what that means? They went from splitting the atom to crossing stars in the span of 8 generations. What are you suggesting?" Thrix demanded. "I'm suggesting," Velorn replied quietly, "that perhaps we should consider the possibility that they've adapted in other ways we haven't noticed." Back on Earth, in the sprawling complex of Terran Defense Command, Commander Reyes stood before the Security Council, 12 men and women representing Earth and its colonies. "It's done," she reported. "The message has been delivered." Admiral Chen, head of the council, nodded grimly. And their response? Exactly as predicted. They'll debate. They'll threaten. They'll form committees. Reyes shrugged. They won't comply. "Then we proceed as planned," Chen said, activating a secure terminal. A complex series of authorization codes appeared, requiring multiple confirmations. Operation Silent Reckoning is now active. All fleet commanders acknowledge receipt of sealed orders. All defense platforms are transitioning to autonomous control. All deep space monitoring stations have gone dark to conclave sensors. The room was still, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. For 7 decades, humanity had walked softly among the stars, bowing to the superior numbers and established power of the conclave. Now, they were discarding the mask. "There's still time to reconsider," said Councillor Takahashi, the only voice of hesitation in the room. "The consequences were calculated long ago," Chen interrupted. "We've given peace every chance. We've endured their condescension, their exploitation, their justice that never seemed to apply when humans were the victims." He looked at each council member in turn. "The conclave has mistaken our restraint for weakness. It's time they learned the difference." Across the vast distances of space, the gears of humanity's response began to turn. Not with the thunder of war drums or the flash of weapons fire, but with the silent, methodical precision of a species that had spent decades preparing for this moment. The Gruthan privateer vessels responsible for the Proxima massacre were conducting routine operations in the Vega sector, untroubled by the charges against them. Their captain, Drelthak, had paid the right bribes, filed the right denials. The Conclave's investigation would take years, and by then, who would remember a few dead humans? His first indication that something had changed came when his ship's navigation system failed. Then communications, then life support. By the time Drelthak realized they were under attack, it was too late. No weapons had been fired, no enemy vessels detected, just a complete, catastrophic shutdown of every networked system on all 3 Gruthan ships. On their bridges, screens activated simultaneously, displaying the same human face, a woman with cold eyes and the bearing of a predator. "This is Commander Elena Reyes of the Terran Alliance. You are responsible for the deaths of 93 human civilians. Your sentence has been determined." The screens went dark. External cameras captured what happened next, the silent, methodical sealing of every airlock and escape pod. The shutdown of remaining life support systems, the ship's now floating tombs, just as the research station had been. No weapons, no battle, no chance to fight back. Just precise, calculated justice, administered exactly as promised. When reports reached the Conclave 12 hours later, the chamber erupted in panic. This wasn't warfare as they understood it. There had been no fleet movement, no energy signatures, no warning. just an invisible hand reaching out to deliver a sentence. They've weaponized our own technology against us. Thrix thundered. This is an outrage. High Chancellor Villorn watched the chaos with ancient, tired eyes. No, he said, though few were listening now. This is a species that has been watching and learning while we dismissed them as primitives. He sighed heavily. And I fear this is only the beginning. He was right. The reckoning. The 24-hour deadline passed without compliance from the Conclave. Instead, they had issued demands of their own. Immediate human withdrawal from all shared territories, surrender of military assets, and a formal apology for the unsanctioned execution of Gruthan citizens. 3 days after Commander Reyes walked out of the conclave chamber, the real demonstration began. On Jarissa Prime, the central banking hub of the conclave economy, every financial transaction system simultaneously crashed. Trillions in commerce halted in an instant. Backup systems activated, only to display the same message on every terminal across the planet. Humanity does not recognize Solenclave authority. In the Palaxian home system, defense grid operators watched in horror as their supposedly impenetrable planetary shields flickered and died. They remained offline for precisely 7 minutes, the same amount of time it had taken for the Proxima research team to suffocate after life support was destroyed, before reactivating as if nothing had happened. Across 20 core conclave worlds, communication systems began broadcasting a simple loop of footage, the recovered security videos from Proxima Centauri IV, showing the final moments of the human researchers as they desperately tried to save each other from the void. No declarations, no demands, just demonstrations of vulnerability, precisely calculated to instill maximum fear with minimum bloodshed. The conclave convened an emergency session, this time with military leaders present. Grand Admiral Zorax of the combined fleet pounded his fist on the table. "We must strike now," he insisted. "Every moment we delay gives them more time to infiltrate our systems." "Strike where?" Chancellor Villorn asked calmly. "Their fleet hasn't moved. Their worlds are heavily shielded. And clearly, they've already breached our most secure networks. What exactly would we be attacking?" "We outmatched them 100 to 1, Zorax snarled. "In ships, perhaps," Villorn conceded. "But this isn't a numbers game anymore. They're not fighting the way we expected." A junior aide rushed into the chamber, face flushed with panic. "The Gruthan High Command has just received a transmission. They're confessing to everything." The room fell silent as a holographic projection appeared. The Gruthan War Council, their usual aggressive posture replaced with something approaching terror. "The humans know everything," their leader stated, mandibles quivering. "They have accessed our most secure archives. They have names, dates, command codes. They know who authorized the attack on their research station. They know which conclave members approved the operation." His compound eyes seemed to stare directly at specific ambassadors in the room. "They have sent us proof. Incontrovertible proof." The transmission cut off abruptly. Within hours, 3 conclave members, those implicated in the Proxima attack, had withdrawn from the coalition. 2 more followed by the end of the day, unwilling to stand against the invisible tide of human retribution. The conclave, once seemingly unassailable, was beginning to fracture. 7 days after the ultimatum, as panic spread through the galactic community, a new transmission was received at Conclave headquarters. Commander Reyes requested a private audience with High Chancellor Villorn. No other representatives, no recordings. They met in the Chancellor's meditation chamber, a small room with windows overlooking the glittering expanse of the galactic core. "You've made your point rather effectively, Commander," Villorn said, his ancient eyes studying the human carefully. "Have we?" Reyes asked. "I'm not certain the Conclave understands yet." "Oh, I think they understand fear quite well now," Villorn replied. "What I'm not sure they comprehend is your endgame. You've demonstrated your capabilities without inflicting mass casualties. You've targeted systems rather than people. That suggests you want something more than revenge. Reyes nodded slowly. Perceptive. Yes, Chancellor, we want something very specific. And that is a renegotiation of humanity's place in the galaxy, she said simply. We've played the role of junior partner for 70 years. We've accepted restrictions, tariffs, and second-class status. We've watched our people die while conclave justice failed them. That arrangement is over. You wish to rule the conclave? Velorn asked. Reyes actually laughed, a sound the ancient diplomat found both relieving and chilling. No, Chancellor. We have no interest in ruling anyone but ourselves. What we want is respect, equal standing, and the acknowledgement that human lives are not expendable pawns in your political games. Velorn was silent for a long moment. And if we refuse? We don't need to destroy the conclave, Reyes said quietly. We've demonstrated that we can cripple it. If necessary, we can dismantle it piece by piece. But that benefits no one. She stood, towering over the diminutive Chancellor. Humanity doesn't want war. We've had enough of that in our own history. What we want is simple, the same consideration you would give any other major power. Because whether the conclave accepts it or not, that's what we are now. 3 weeks later, the conclave reconvened with a new charter. The hierarchical structure that had placed older spacefaring species above newcomers was abolished. A new council was formed, with representation based on capability rather than history. The Terran Alliance took its place among the founding members. Those responsible for the Proxima massacre, both the direct perpetrators and their conclave enablers, were tried and sentenced according to a newly established interspecies justice code. On Earth, Admiral Chen reviewed the final reports with Commander Reyes. Operation Silent Reckoning is officially concluded, he said. Our infiltration systems are being withdrawn from non-critical conclave infrastructure. Monitoring will continue at agreed-upon levels. And the contingencies? Reyes asked. Chen's expression remained neutral. Remain in place, as discussed with Chancellor Velorn. Trust, but verify. Reyes nodded. The new arrangement with the conclave was built on mutual respect, but humanity had learned its lesson. Never again would they be caught unprepared. Never again would they rely solely on the promises of others for their security. In his private chambers on the conclave homeworld, Chancellor Velorn recorded his final observations before retiring from diplomatic service. The arrival of humans changed everything, he dictated, not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they thought differently. While we built our power on tradition and continuity, they built theirs on adaptation and ingenuity. While we saw technology as a tool of convenience, they saw it as a potential weapon. While we played politics, they prepared. He paused, staring out at the stars. The greatest mistake the conclave ever made was believing humans were merely imitating us, adopting our customs, following our rules. We never understood that they were studying us, finding our weaknesses, integrating our knowledge with their unique perspective. A final thought occurred to him. Most remarkably, even in their moment of complete advantage, they chose restraint over domination. They had the power to destroy us, but instead forced us to become better. That, perhaps, is the most frightening thing about humans, not their capacity for calculated violence, but their capacity for calculated mercy. The conclave had learned its lesson. Humanity's patience was not infinite, but neither was their appetite for vengeance. They didn't want to rule the stars. They simply refused to be ruled by them. The day the conclave learned what happens when humans stop being diplomatic became the day the galaxy began a new chapter, one written in equal measure by all its citizens, regardless of how long they had traveled among the stars.